Hello, my name is Emily Davies-Miller, and today I'll be discussing the relationship of sexual desire and social restrictions cultures place on the expression of these needs. For centuries, we have used laws and social consequences to restrict people's expressions of feelings, especially those that are considered deviant to society's definition of normal sexual desire. The emotions we feel are then expressed in bodily functions that are too used to categorize behavior. The harshness of previous attitudes towards sex still linger in our current society, with laws that prevent people from getting married to even controlling sexual partnerships. Our current culture always treats sex with suspicion, and it construes almost any sexual practice in terms of its worst possible expression. In our current society, laws are constantly being made to restrict, for example, sex workers and their rights, which ultimately derives from our society's constant need to control. Certain categories of people, again, view prostitution and porn stars to not be in their deviation of normal, and they're considered abnormal. With these ideas in mind, certain lawmakers look to restrict these people in any way possible to control their sexual encounters and ultimately have society monitor this for them. Although much progress has been made, homophobia is still a prevalent issue in present laws regarding sexual encounters. With only the recent Supreme Court ruling legalizing same-sex marriage, states still fight to restrict the rights of same-sex couples, especially transgendered people, especially people of different gendered origins. These institutional inequalities date back to early centuries, where homosexuality was deemed a disorder, even in our psychiatric manual. The invisible line of abnormal and normal pushed all of the wants and desires of homosexuality on the abnormal side. Society considered homosexuality a disorder that could be treated and cured. Why does our society constantly want us to fit into one thought to be variation of sexual desire? Just as people come in many different variations, so do our bodily needs. There are absolutely no parts of our DNA that tell an individual you are going to be attracted to this, and everybody's going to be the same. So certainly our society should not do this. Overall, the society needs to control come from humans trying to understand things without previous exposure. All different types of prejudice stem from the need to categorize in our brain, which leads to assumptions about human behavior in order to understand them. And overall, these assumptions can lead to negative connotations to certain classes and races and sexualities of people that aren't necessarily true. Just because one individual did them doesn't mean that whole category did them. But unfortunately, that's our brain's only way to understand things that we are never been exposed to before. As our society progresses to be slightly more accepting of variation to sexual encounters, pornography has begun to rise and take on these new values. They tend to place specific standards that have been held from generations past that we thought we had begun to move on from. Throughout pornography, specific bodies are displayed more valuable than others, which then becomes commercialized sexual expectations of how sexual encounters should occur. People of color are specifically underrepresented in pornography and have expressed the inequalities they experience in categories of pay. So even though we are moving in a positive direction towards allowing more sexual encounters to occur, individuals and governments still find ways to infiltrate remaining intentions to separate normal and abnormal sexual desires. Whether these rules lie from the idea of homosexuality to race to class, we still see them seep into our progress we thought society had made. Another group of people that experience extreme forms of repression towards sexual encounters are people who are labeled disabled. Culture refers to the idea of sex, which is used to describe the private ownership of an individual having sex and being able to do so. Disability places a stigma on an individual's ability to have sex and overall influences their sex life. This stigma also includes a myth that many people tend to believe regarding disabled people's ability to feel and experience sexual feelings and desires. Many people believe that disabled individuals do not at all experience or want sexual feelings altogether, which results in a lack of sex culture. Another issue lies in the lack of privacy not only disabled people experience, but also gay, lesbian, bisexual, queer, and transgendered people suffer from, because these categories of people are highly scrutinized. They experience restraints to where they can perform sexual encounters and what society deems acceptable in public, which limits their capability to express themselves more than those that are. Ability defines and represents the baseline of humanness, which therefore defines people who are less able to be less human. Society values people who have the ability, which includes the ability to have sex. This demonstrates that ability and sex are interconnected, resulting in the thought that sex may be the privileged domain of ability for people who are able to do so, which unfortunately is not true, and disabled people have the same sexual desires and wants and want to experience all of these things as well. Conclusively, homosexuals, sex workers, and disabled people are a few of the many examples of the way society tries to control the way we handle and express sexual desires. Whether it be our ability to perform sexually, the stigmas around that, or the specific races we see in porn, and what society deems valuable to the present culture. As the human race progresses faster and faster, the means upon which we define our sexual desires will hopefully become more and more diverse. As feminism and stuff like that comes and swoops in and tries to make people more knowledgeable and less ignorant about these topics, I think the repressions that people feel will disperse, and hopefully we will grow in a new direction as a society to experience less institutional inequalities towards people that feel repressed, and hopefully have a more open culture towards sexual encounters. Thank you for your time.